Hey everyone, welcome back to Thought Crime and Keto and Krime. Today we are finishing up my countdown of my top 3 favorite Universal monster movies with my number 1 most favorite, The Wolfman. But before we get into that, I want to thank my channel members and my patrons. You can join them by clicking the button or the link below. But the best thing you can do for the channel is to subscribe, share, comment. Let me know how you're enjoying these. I will be back to my normal true crime content in November, but I'm really enjoying kind of this, do whatever I want to do horror fest in October, because October's like my favorite time of the year. It really is. I love Halloween. And so, without further ado, and many thanks to my patrons and my channel members, let's get into The Wolfman. The Wolfman, 1941. With The Wolfman, Universal Studios entered the 40s, and the prominence of Lon Chaney Junior as their most popular actor. He kind of became the Robert Downey Junior of the 40s for the Universal Cinematic Universe. He would play the Wolfman several different times. He would also play Frankenstein's monster in a couple of the Frankenstein sequels, and would just literally become the It Man for Universal. He was the son of Lon Chaney, who played the Phantom of the Opera in the 1925 silent film, and actually reprised the role of the Wolfman after his father died of throat cancer in 1941. Now, it was rumored that Lon Chaney Sr. was supposed to play the part, but his son took the role after his death. Now, his real name was not Lon Chaney Jr., but he did reprise it so that he wouldn't be an unknown playing this role, but also would not be confused with his father. So he took the moniker Junior. His real name was Keto Chaney, but took on his father's name, as I said, just so that there would be some star power behind this movie. However, he did not get top billing. If you take a look at the poster, he's just in with the regular cast. It's not like Chaney is the Wolfman, like you see on more modern posters. It's just, he's in the cast. But after the success of this movie, which was a blockbuster success, it was Chaney is, and anything else that he did. So he became a really huge box office draw. All right, so let's get into the plot of this movie. This movie opens in probably 1930s Wales at the estate of Sir John Talbot, played by Claude Rains, who was another Universal superstar, having played the original Invisible Man, as well as supporting roles in other Universal movies. Also in this movie is Bela Lugosi. That's right. Dracula is in this movie. So it did have star power behind it for sure. But it opens up in Nallawelly, Wales, at the estate of Sir John Talbot, played by Claude Rains. His oldest son had died in a hunting accident. So now the only person that can be trained to take over their business, and they don't really tell us what the Talbot business was, but just that they had to have somebody take over the family business. So it has fallen to his youngest son, Larry Talbot, played by Lon Chaney Junior, who has been in America for many years, living as an American, had no desire to take over the family business, but is now coming back out of a sense of duty. And he arrives home. He and John have a conversation about what's expected of him, and he agrees that he's going to fulfill his family duty. And I'm going to drop a couple of clips. Now, I'm gay. I don't make that out. I don't hide that. But I will say, as a lesbian, that Lon Chaney Jr. is a fine hunk of man. I don't know that he's just very debonair, and I like him. Now, am I wrong? No. But anyway, just thought I'd throw that in there. But after their conversation, Larry decides that he's going to fix the telescope in their observatory. So I guess they do some contributions to science somehow. And he is playing with that when he fixes it on the antique store across the way and manages to see Evelyn Gwen Conliffe, who is the daughter of the antique shop owner, in her room. And he notices some crescent moon shaped earrings on her. So he's kind of got the hots for Gwen. So he goes into the antique store a little bit later and asks to buy crescent shaped earrings. And she says, well, we don't have any of those for sale. And he mentions, well, didn't you have some upstairs in your room? And of course, well, creeper, they get into a kind of a conversation, and she says she's not going to sell him those earrings, so he offers to buy a silver-headed walking cane that happens to have the head of a wolf on it. He asks, is this a dog? She says, no, that's a wolf. And it also has a pentagram on it, which is the sign of the werewolf. And Larry has never heard of werewolves before. I mean, where have you been, Larry? And so she tells him that the pentagram is the sign of the wolf, that people that have lycanthropy often turn into werewolves when the wolfsbane blooms. And there again is the plant wolfsbane, which we heard about first in Dracula. So it's a magical plant. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the lore in this movie is not exactly like the werewolf lore that we've heard in the modern times, that people turn into werewolves when the full moon blooms. Here it's when the wolfsbane blooms, not when there's a full moon. So there's a link between this plant and the werewolf curse. So remember that. And she also tells him of the ancient gypsy poem, even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers at night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. So evidently it's a seasonal thing. So basically she tells him about it, but he convinces her to go on a walk with him that night and to go see the Gypsy Carnival, because of course that's in town. So she says, okay, I'll do it. So when he gets there to pick her up that evening, she's brought along a friend named Jenny to kind of keep it at a stay, because we find out that she's engaged. So, but she's hanging out with Larry. So he takes both women by the arm and walks them to the Gypsy Carnival. While there, they meet a gypsy fortune teller by the name of Bella, played by Bela Lugosi, not very creative in their names, who offers to tell their fortune. And they agree to let him, but he will have to take them one at a time. So Larry and Gwen kind of take a walk while Jenny goes in to have her fortune read. And while Larry and Gwen are walking and talking, he asks her more about the about the werewolf legend, and she tells him that the pentagram is a sign that appears as a birthmark on the chest of every werewolf, and they also can see a pentagram in the right hand of their victim. So evidently, if you see a pentagram on someone and you're a werewolf, that's who you're destined to attack next. So we cut back to Bella telling the fortune of Jenny, and when he looks at her hands, a pentagram appears on her right hand, and he suddenly freaks out and tells her she needs to get away, that, she needs to run for her life. He can't tell her why, but to please leave. Of course, Jenny flips out. Here's this gypsy fortune teller flipping out on her, and she runs across the moors, as it was, because of course, and it's foggy and it's night, and you see wolfsbane blooming everywhere, and then you see Bella transform into a werewolf. Now, it's not an elaborate werewolf transformation, but you can tell he's a werewolf. And he's chasing after Jenny, and he gets to her and he kills her, but not before Larry hears the screams, Larry Talbot, and he runs to, of course, try to rescue Jenny, and ends up getting into a fight with the werewolf and beating the werewolf to death with the silver wolf-shaped head of his walking cane. And, of course, the werewolf dies because, as we'll find out in this movie, silver is what kills werewolves. Either a silver bullet or a silver-headed cane will kill them.
No. Now go away. Go quickly. Go! Yes! I'm going! What was that?
I don't know. Never heard anything like it before.
Stay here.
But not before the werewolf bites Larry. Now, he doesn't realize it's a man wolf. He just thinks it's a wolf. So he's telling everybody, I killed a wolf, and attacked Jenny. And they get the coroner there to kind of go over everything. And it appears, yes, that Jenny was killed by a wild animal. Though they see a few wolf's tracks, but not anything deliberate. But yet they find the dead body of the gypsy man Bella as himself, so who was beaten to death by a cane or something. A blunt force trauma definitely caused his death. So they take the body of Bella back to the gypsies, and then we see Bella's mom, Maliva, who is a fortune teller, kind of do a kind of a eulogy over her son, which says, "My son, your way was stony and thorny through no fault of your own. Now you will find peace." So it is kind of a sad situation. Meanwhile, they're still trying to find the body of this wolf that Larry says he kills. And meanwhile, Larry has been taken by a wagon back to the Talbot estate, and is just telling everybody he killed the wolf, but they can't find the body of the wolf. So later on, when the law enforcement gets there, they're questioning what really happened. And Sir John Talbot, who I guess is the richest, most influential man in this village in Wales, is telling them that no, if his son says he killed a wolf, he killed a wolf. And they're like, but there's no wolf. We can't find a wolf. And so all we find is this body of this dead gypsy. And so John Talbot offers the explanation that maybe it was the gypsy that was attacking Jenny, or maybe he came along to help Jenny and chase the wolf off, but then Larry got there, and in all the excitement, he killed Bella, thinking Bella was the attacker. But they don't even choose to interrogate Larry at all. They just let it go. It's really weird. But you got to remember, this is Wales in the 1930s. Maybe that's how things were done. Meanwhile, we cut to the next day. Larry wakes up in his room, and he goes immediately to the mirror to look at the wound on his chest, because as far as he knows, he was bitten by the wolf. I don't know why No one attempted to dress that wound. No one even attended to it. So I guess, I don't know. There's some plot holes in this movie. But he looks at it and there's no wound at all. But there is a star-shaped, what looks like a birthmark. And so Larry flips out and he goes to the antique shop to try to talk to Gwen about it. And she basically tells him, I'm sure you're just imagining things. Don't worry about it. So he kind of goes and walks around by himself for a little while and ends up night at the Gypsy Carnival and runs into Bella's mother, Maliva, who basically tells him the truth, that my son was a vampire. And my son was a werewolf, and if he bit you, you're a werewolf now. And so she asks to see his chest. She sees the birthmark, and she says, I'm so sorry, my son. There's nothing that can help you. And you need to go and heaven help you. Meanwhile, the gypsies pack up and get out of town. So he feels he's like slipping into some sort of dementia. He's really feeling some mania come over him. So he decides he's going to go home. So as he's going home, he feels this hot fever come over himself, and he imagines hair growing on his body. And he finally gets home, goes up to his room, locks his doors, and he looks in the mirror, doesn't see anything. He looks at his hands, his arms, don't see anything, and then he sits down because he feels something on his legs, and he basically rolls up his pants legs, and then that's when we see the very thick hair starting to grow on his legs. And then he goes back and looks at the mirror, and then slowly we see the face of Lon Chaney Junior transform into that famous Wolfman makeup that we're all so familiar with. And believe it or not, that makeup was originally created for their other werewolf franchise, Werewolf in London. But the actor that played in Werewolf of London would not wear it. He said it was nobody could tell who he was. It was itchy. So I guess actors could choose what kind of makeup they wanted. I don't know. But Lon Chaney Jr. was glad to wear the makeup. And he said, but it took hours every day to put into it. That's why in this movie, you don't see the actual Wolfman until about 40 or 45 minutes in. It's literally the second act of the movie before you get to see the Wolfman. So if you're looking for him to turn up soon, don't be disappointed. It takes a while to get to him just because of the amount of makeup I guess it took. But he goes out. We see him go out and stalk his first victim. He kills a local gravedigger. After his body is found, they start looking for a wolf. They think there's a mad wolf on the prowl, so they start looking. Meanwhile, Larry starts to slip more and more into insanity. So we're starting to see this theme set up of, is he actually a wolf, or is he just going insane and imagining he's a wolf? And so we come to realize, yes, he's actually a wolf later on, but he goes to Gwen and tries to tell her to please stay away from him, and he doesn't know what's going on. He begs his father for help, Sir John Talbot, who doesn't believe him. He says, you're just imagining this. You might have some mental disorder going on, but you're not a wolf. So it gets to a second night where the wolf's bane is blooming. And John Talbot decides he is going to help his son. So he basically ties his son up in his room. He locks all the doors. He puts his son in front of the window where he can see the hunt for the wolf the actual wolf they think is stalking the village, where he can see that, but he leaves him where he can still see the wolf's mane and the full moon. And as a result, he transforms again and breaks out of the room. Now, earlier that day when he had been telling Gwen to stay away from him, he saw a pentagram in her hand. So he is trying his best not to hurt anybody. But once he transforms, he breaks out of his room and goes out into the woods seeking a victim. Meanwhile, you have John Talbot out there with the others looking for the wolf because he's going to convince his son that he's not a werewolf and that he's just having some kind of mania. And during the hunt, somehow Gwen leaves her house looking for Larry because she's going to try to help him, because that always happens. White women. Just kidding. And then she runs out into the woods looking for Larry. He sees her. She sees him. He chases her. There's a scuffle. She faints. Who hears her screams but Larry's father, John Talbot? And he runs up, just sees this wolf attacking Gwen, and beats her, and beats the wolf to death with the silver-headed cane. And then once the wolf is dead, he gets up. To his horror, he sees it transform into the body of his son. And then everyone that was on the hunt gets there. They realize what had happened. And then, of course, the gypsy woman comes along, and she gives Larry the same eulogy as she gave her son. Your walk was thorny through no fault of your own, but now you will find peace. And that's how the Wolfman ends. Why do I like this movie so much? Because it's, to me, a Shakespearean tragedy. It's not really, I don't consider the Wolfman a villain. He's just cursed. He has no control over what he does. I put him up there with an anti-hero, not really a villain, because he doesn't want to do what he does. This movie is definitely a Shakespearean tragedy, because you're cheering for this guy, yet you're worried for this guy, yet you know what's going to happen to this guy. That's the reason I like this movie so much. Also, the special effects in this movie are great. And I think it's just an awesome movie. To me, it was where all the werewolf lore comes from. If you're a fan of Twilight or the Underworld Lycan franchise, this movie is what originated all the lore. And I think that's why I like it, because it was the original. And also, you feel sympathy for the Wolfman character, for the Larry Talbot character. And this was not the end of the Wolfman. He would go on to, Lon Chaney Junior would go on to star as the Wolfman, and Wolfman meets Frankenstein, Abbott and Costello meet the Wolfman, and many others. So this was not the end for the Larry Talbot character at all. Anyway, that concludes my synopsis on the three Universal Monsters, my favorite movies. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back really soon this week with some bonus videos. I'm going to do a talk on my journey into from Pentecostalism to atheism. That will be out later this week. And then next week we will get into the Bell Witch Project, which I'm really excited back. I've been working really hard on that. Hopefully I will have the Jessalyn Maxwell deposition read and analyzed by then, so that I can bring that to you. And we've got some good stuff going on, so I'm really enjoying this. I hope you are too. And I'll be back really soon. Until next time, Keto Comic.